goal setting. You and I both know that can be just a really difficult thing to do because it brings up like so many feelings in us, and sometimes we accomplish them, sometimes we don't, sometimes we're successful, sometimes we fail, and man, we can begin to really beat ourselves up over it. And even in ministry, it can just be so hard to identify the right goals or the pertinent goals, the relevant goals. And so it can be a huge deal year in, year out. So in this episode, as we come to the end of another year, I get to talk with my wife, which I'm so excited about, and hear her perspective as not only a pastor's wife, but a nutritionist as well, as she talks to us about, making healthy goals, physical goals, diet, exercise, etc., and how then those things can help to really bolster our spiritual, mental, emotional, etc. goals that we might have as well. So listen in. I hope you're encouraged. It's a real fun one. Thanks for listening. Oh man, I am really pumped up for today's episode. I'm sitting here with my wife, Tasha, and it's December something. I actually don't know what today is, but mid-December, and we're mid-holidays, mid-planning, Christmas partying, school events, all kinds of things. So got a few things going on, but I've been really looking forward to this one. Tasha and I talk a lot about some of the topics we're going to be covering today. But today, we're kind of looking at 2026. And I know a lot of us set goals and think about goals, think about things we could be doing. So Tasha and I, over the years, we've served together in ministry for 20 plus years, maybe more, and then individually for 25 plus years. So we've set a few goals over that time and had some different ideas. And one of the things we've learned over that span is kind of the big idea for our episode today as we talk about whole life goals for 2026. But one of the big ideas that comes from, some of the things we've learned is that small, consistent habits change more than grand resolutions do. So small, consistent habits change more than grand resolutions do. So that's the big idea. And I think, Tasha, one of the things that you do that I hope you can, I know is going to pepper our conversation, but you're a nutritionist. You're a nutritional therapy practitioner, technically. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yeah.
So an NTP, as it is. And so that now colors so much of your life. And I imagine, will, like I said, color and pepper our conversation tonight. But yeah, before I get kind of rambling on and on and on, would you mind sharing a little bit, specifically, I guess, what it has been for you in the area of being an NTP, what that has meant to you, and maybe like what's one of your favorite things about being an NTP?
Oh man, I love being a nutritionist. I love being able to help people, honestly. And I think that talking about goal setting today is, my work as a nutritionist and also, in the dance because I have a background in dance education as well. And I think both of those areas involve some level of coaching and being able to coach people through things that they want to get to, goals that they want to reach. And so I think just working as a nutritionist is a way to be able to take somebody in and hear where their heart is at and like where their mind is at and what their barriers are in their life and what they're wanting to achieve or some place that they're trying to get to. And then I get to be a support person who comes in and helps them get there. And that to me is just really exciting work. Yeah, it's really exciting work. So yeah, I love being a nutritionist. Mostly, I'm very interested in health and wellness. Food, I love food. But at the end of the day, that's kind of the vehicle that I get to use to just help people. And I think that's the thing that excites me about the job more than anything else.
That's awesome. Yeah. So you would say even that you've learned a lot about coaching people through barriers and overcoming obstacles and all those things.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think is like a big obstacle to achieving goals, maybe just generally?
Oh gosh. it's different for everybody. And different, so I don't know that I mean, I don't know what you think. I don't know that I could say that there's like one major thing that keeps people from getting to the thing that they want to get to, you know? Um, I had a client recently who we together wanted her to be drinking more water. So this was one of her goals, was to just be drinking more water. And this was, under the umbrella of like a bigger goal that she had. But hydration is a way to get there. Okay. But she couldn't do it. She would come back to session after session after session, and I haven't increased my water intake. And so, well, how are we going to get there? And so we kind of drilled down on what her individual barriers are. But it's like little stuff. We want to think, there are these big things that keep me from reaching these big goals, but usually it isn't big things when we talk about barriers to reaching goals. It's like little things. I mean, one of the first things that I did for this client was say, you need to go buy a 40-ounce water bottle. And then you're only going to have to refill your water bottle once,
Yeah.
you know? But that was like a big shift for her to just think like, okay, I just need to get on Amazon today or whatever and buy a water bottle. We think that it's these big things a lot of times that keep us from reaching the things that we want or desire or whatever. But I think for a lot of people, it's the small stuff that we don't even give attention to or think, oh, that's so insignificant. Or like, why can't I just get it together? Why can't I just figure this out? And we don't stop to think about like, what are the actual things that are keeping us from getting it figured out because they would feel too insignificant to like put on paper
Mhm.
or say out loud.
I love what you're saying because you're actually again you're like uh emphasizing this point that it's the small consistent habits that can get us to our goals, but it's also the little things that keep us from them. It's not the big monumental thing like it's not saying no to here. I mean, I'll just confess that like for me in the diet, I have such a hard time walking past a Cinnabon stand. Like so like it's not like I'm trying to avoid the Cinnabon stand that I see coming and I'm like, okay, I can't give in no matter how good this smells. But it's the smaller things. And so as we kind of like move into the ministry realm of things, what again, we did ministry for so long together, still volunteer and do different things together. But what do you think is in ministry specifically? What do you think is makes it really difficult to set and to achieve goals? For just from what you've experienced and observed.
I mean, as having history of being a pastor's wife for several years and seeing you really, you know, neck deep in the ministry at a local church, and then just, leading small groups or serving in whatever different capacities. I feel like there's a level of pressure over people who are leading in ministry that keeps them from feeling like they can either do the thing that they know they actually want to do because they feel pressure coming from wherever the pressure is coming from that makes them feel like they have to do it a different way or do something else, do something other than what they see or envision that they want. Um, or it's the pressure of having to show up for everybody all the time. So, like, forget personal goals in ministry. What's a personal goal, right? I'm thinking about my church. I'm thinking about my congregation. And I feel like I've watched you do this or did, for several years. Um, and I just think that there's a level of pressure in ministry that makes goal setting difficult. And then you feel like if you set a goal, well, how am I going to reach that goal? And then that can become a bit of I don't want to say an idol. I feel like that might be too harsh. But the idea being like, well, if I have this metric or this benchmark or something that I'm trying to reach for my church or congregation, for my elder board, for whoever it would be this year, well, how am I going to get there? And then it becomes the pressure of how do I meet the goal? So I feel like pressure, I don't know. I would love, I mean, what do you think? Like, you're the one who was in it. I've been in ministry leadership in various roles, but never in a pastoral position. But you have, and so I've observed that a lot, of the pressure of ministry as an observer. But I'm kind of curious what you feel like in the position of pastor specifically. What keeps you from, what makes
Mm-mm.
goals hard?
Yeah, I love what you're saying about pressure because that's so true. It's you're trying so hard to be conscious of the different needs around you. There's different needs in the congregation. This group wants more money and time spent on missions. This other group wants more money and time spent in small groups. This other group wants, the church building to be attended to. Like, there's so many different wants and needs, and so you're right, there's a lot of pressure. And so how do you bring, how do you filter out those needs and try to identify, like, well, God, what do you want in this local church? And and then and I would say, that the barrier, or the to add to the pressure, is what we talk about so much, is the velocity of life. There's just no time or margin left. And so, if your team or your board isn't getting out together and spending time together, talking through goals and talking through these things, talking through what's most important, or how to divvy up the budget, then, it just, then you're not, if you don't make time for it, then it's definitely not going to happen.
Mhm.
And that's kind of where I wonder if the small incremental habits would be so helpful. So instead of even having like one big retreat, maybe if you had, a quarterly retreats, and you, instead of going away for a weekend, spent a long lunch together, maybe dividing up a little bit more, trying to, identify that time is a huge barrier to setting and achieving goals while also in ministry. Um, so that's one piece of it. But then the other piece of it that I hope we get to talk about right now is that there's multiple different buckets that are so important in life. And so you have your church family, you have your church job, which, not many people in ministry can keep ministry in the job bucket. It bleeds over and into everything else. And I think that that's probably how it's supposed to be. People disagree, but you have a church, you have a church bucket, and you have a family bucket. Then you have your own personal health buckets. Maybe you have friends, you know, many don't. And
Mhm.
that the statistics bear that out. But so then you have these different buckets, and then you're trying to decide, what bucket do I tend to? So I guess I'd lob it back to you, but what, would you have, as you think about being in ministry and also having a family, what would have helped you, or what would you, do you have advice about, hey, as a mom, or as a partner in this with a family, it really would have helped if we would have been setting goals for the family like this, or if maybe there was a more even distribution. Like,
Mm.
what do you think about that?
Yeah. Let me jump back real quick before I answer that question, because you said something that made me think that I think a lot of pastors are very visionary in their personality type. Um, in order to lead a church, I mean, I feel like you have to have some level of vision. And so I think that the visionary type personality in the pastoral role can end up with the pastor wanting to set a lot of big goals sometimes, right? You're like dreaming big for your church, and you have vision for your church and your congregation. And you see the zoomed out, bird's eye view of what everybody needs. And you like, I mean, you loved when you were in ministry, and you loved dreaming about for the church, on behalf of the people. Um, and I think that having a team around you as a pastor is just so hyper important, who can um, help figure out how to like walk out the dreams or the goals, right? If we want to set a goal for fill in the blank at your church, right? Or I'm seeing that this is a need. And as a pastor, you can go in and set this big goal, but I feel like if there isn't a good team around saying, okay, well, how are we going to get there, or what's realistic, or working together in ministry, then I wonder if as a pastor you may end up feeling like a failure sometimes, of like, well, I have all this vision that I see for my church, but we can never quite get there. I feel like having a good team around you is really important. And even the question that you just asked, like I'll tie that to that question, because I think that having a ministry team that you really are in it with, where there are different personalities and different perspectives, and different ways of seeing things, can help with accountability, keeping the leaders in check of like, well, are you talking to your wife about the new year, or are we taking time to rest or Sabbath or away from the demands of ministry so that we can think about our family, so that we can think about our kids? And because I know that as a pastor, just again observing, it's easy to think that my service to the church is the primary importance in my life. But relationship with your husband or wife, relationship with your kids if you have kids, all those things are also of primary importance, I would say. And so having people around you in ministry who can keep that in check, I think is really important. And to be pointing each other back to the ministry of family, if that's a part of the pastor's life.
Yeah, that's such a good point. So I would even encourage that a small step that could be taken is to evaluate the team you have.
Mm.
Is this a team that will help you be accountable? Is this a team that can speak into your life? Is this a team of people you trust? Is this a team of, I don't know what different words I could use to say it, but this team that's around you, will they fulfill those pockets and spaces that you just described so well? That would be a great like goal. And then again, the small little thing you could do is, set up, if it's not that and you don't have that, set up some lunches, start meeting with some people and pray about, can I invite this person to the team? Could I fill this seat with this type of person? Right.
Right. Yeah, and as a pastor, I feel like your team that's around you and that you're ministering side by side with, they really help to inform the way that you're living your life, both inside and outside of the church. But the pastor often is the person at the church who sets the tone for just the culture and how the whole team functions. And so considering, I think in a pastoral role, what is the tone that I'm setting? If everybody feels strung out, stressed out, like they don't have space or capacity for personal goals, family goals, things that they're focused on outside of the ministry of the church, you know, is there a place where, as the pastor, I can set a different tone or establish a different culture, feel in our church culture or a ministry leader culture, that would make space for the people on my team, who are like buffering me? Can I also buffer them and really set the tone for a ministry that does engage wives, husbands, families, kids? Um, yeah.
Yeah, you're so smart. You're so good at this. I think that was the tension that we had felt for at different points, but the tension of really wanting to be like in it as a family together and not feel like
Right.
siloed or like, oh, my husband's a part of this ministry, but the kids and I aren't really, or however that ended up feeling.
Well,
So
yeah,
yeah,
because when you're pastoring, you, Matt, me, Tasha, as the pastor's wife, I'm also at the church all the time. Our kids are at the church all the time. And the kids of the pastor, I feel like, I mean, I can't speak for everybody's kids, but I feel like our kids really kind of owned that,
Oh yeah.
of like, yeah, we're the pastor's kids, and for better or worse.
Yep.
And but the pros of that are that you have a family that's engaged in the local church, in the local church and in the capital C church, and kind of seeing the importance of it day in and day out. But the church at the end of the day isn't the whole life of the whole family. When you talk about, and I don't mean the capital C church, right? And I don't mean faith, and I don't mean a relationship with Jesus, and I don't mean community. I don't mean any of those things. I mean church as business or church logistics, or a lot of the things that the pastor carries, the family doesn't carry with the pastor. And there are, as much as there are church logistics, there are marriage logistics, and there are family logistics, and there are other areas of logistics, if I can use that word, in life that have to be attended to beyond, above and beyond, or outside of just the ministry logistics.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that having the kids be making space for them in the church, and also making space outside of church as business or church as a job, making space for kids and spouse to have a place apart from the job of ministry is really
Mm-hmm.
important.
Yeah. It reminds me of when, if there was anything that I did right, I really loved setting up man time
Yep.
with with our son. And I remember that began just as hot cocoa and marshmallows
Mm-hmm.
the at the dining room table, and we would put, I think our daughter was really like newbornish, but so that would put our son at the toddler, young child age, and just started having man time with him to try to set up that space that, like you described, was outside of all the rest of this and was just like our time. And so, and what's cool is we still call it that, and still get to do that from time to time, which is really cool that continues. But that could be again another small goal to try to set to foster a more whole life health, would be to set up some time outside of the church hours, to just do things as a family. So, and every family is different. I mean, we do things different. Every family is different. That's like the most unprofound thing we're going to say here at this podcast. But you got to kind of identify, I think, what your family culture is like, and you just have to kind of own it, and not, I think, like, not feel bad about, oh, this is kind of just the way we are. I think in our family, like, we're homebodies. We like hanging out on the couch and watching a movie all together. We talked this last summer about, we like driving across the country together. I mean, that's not something that other families probably think is really cool. You probably think that's horrific, but we identified that, oh, I guess we do like this, and I guess this is fun, and we do have good memories doing this. So, setting up those rhythms, which I said the word rhythm, and that already brings up, um, a key point in all of this is that, and you've kind of said this, but ministry impacts every area of our life. So the spiritual, the emotional, but also the physical health. And that's, I think, where even you come in a bit with nutrition and some of the work that you've now done over the past many, many years, getting into this. I say deeper into this field because since being married, you've been deep into this, but getting even deeper into it. And so yeah, I kind of want to poke on you a little bit about small, small, tangible things that especially those in ministry can do to really, again, help their physical health from a nutrition standpoint. I don't want to load your lips, but one thing you helped me learn was this idea, and first thing in the morning is like my morning coffee, to delay that. So delay that a little bit, or even try to get some protein in you first, then have that coffee. And then that helps your blood sugar metabolism throughout the rest of the day, helps your digestive system, etc. But I'm getting out of my lane and into your lane.
Mm-hmm.
So you can tell me if I'm saying that the right way, or would you consider that to be like a little thing that a person could do that would be helpful? Um, was that just was that just helpful for me, or am I totally off track? Like what do you think?
Well, I mean, for sure. I think, again, and not just pastors and not just people in ministry, a lot of people are going into the new year thinking about their health. I think for pastors, that becomes especially important because pastors are responsible for the spiritual health of, you know, tens to hundreds to maybe thousands of people. And so your own personal health will absolutely impact how effective you're able to be. And I don't even say that to diminish, obviously, the work of the Holy Spirit, the work of Christ in your church, because the church doesn't the church doesn't live and die on the pastor. The church doesn't live and die on the health of the pastor. The church doesn't, but we know after being in ministry that there are just some very real, tangible, day to day things that can make life in ministry not feel as depleting. Because life in ministry is hard, it is a stressor. And so to be able to walk in a space of resilience, I think, as a ministry leader, pastor and ministry leader, is important. And a lot of the ways that we take care of ourselves can really aid in that. The way that I really love to think about this is that our God is a God of life. And so anytime I can pursue life in my own life, the things of life instead of the things of death, that's going to be a benefit to me and a bolster to me and a way that I'm walking in the ways of God. And that's kind of how I think about health and personal health. And, is that anytime I choose to do something that is health supportive, that's choosing something that's life giving, which is choosing the ways of God for my life, in my life, through my life. And so that's kind of how I think and frame taking care of yourself if you're in a high stress situation like a position in ministry. So yeah, excuse me. So starting your day with protein is just basically a very basic way to take care of your metabolism. I mean, if you think about all the energy that's required for a day in the life of a ministry leader, the mass amounts of energy that's required, both physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, that energy is actually something that's measurable in our cells, and it's called ATP. And our bodies make ATP for that's what powers every single function that every single cell does every single split second of the day. And so if we're not setting up our bodies to really be in a place where they can function, be functioning optimally to make the required energy or ATP that's needed, we're going to feel that. We're going to feel depletion in that. And starting the day with a savory or protein forward, breakfast and holding coffee, like that's just one way that you're helping to set up your metabolism for the day to not have a blood sugar crash at 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. so that you can keep going, have nice, steady energy, steady fuel throughout the day.
Can you talk a little bit about what are the signs of that blood sugar crash, just for people who maybe feel that?
Oh, sure.
Maybe they can give some language to that.
I mean, it would be feeling fatigue. If you think about, 2 p.m., I just feel like, it kind of comes over you like a wave, like, whoa, I need to lay down. I don't feel right. I feel immediately fatigued or possibly dizzy or possibly like I need to eat the whole fridge right now. If you start to feel snacky around 2 o'clock, right? Then those are great signs. Maybe like a little bit of brain fog, like I can't think as clearly. These are all signs that maybe my energy is crashing a bit or not sustaining me through the afternoon. And that we think the 2 p.m. crash is just the 2 p.m. crash, but it really can go all the way back to breakfast and how we start our day. And if we start our day more solidly with a balanced breakfast plate, which would be protein, fat, and fiber alongside and, you know, primary before the carbohydrates on my plate. And then I have the carbohydrates alongside of that. And it's like this, I talk about it like an energy campfire. So your carbs are like the kindling that you use to start the fire, and they burn fast and they burn quick, but then they burn out quick. So it's when you need quick energy, that's what a carbohydrate is doing for you. So if you eat a breakfast, that's like a bagel with butter or a toast with butter or cereal or pancakes or waffles, and there's no other macronutrient in there to balance out. It's just like you're trying to run your day on kindling. And if you've sat at a campfire, like if you can imagine sitting at a campfire trying to keep the fire going with just kindling all night, that obviously doesn't work. It's exhausting. And so adding, even fat is like the dietary fat, healthy dietary fat is like those slow burning logs. So having some good sources of healthy fat at breakfast are going to help sustain that energy. And protein also helps slow the rate at which the carbohydrates are used in your body. And so adding protein and same with fiber helps slow the rate at which the carbohydrates are used. So adding protein, fat, and fiber alongside your carbs that you're eating at breakfast gives like this beautiful like energy campfire that will burn into the afternoon and early evening as long as you're continuing with those balanced meals throughout the day.
That's so good. Energy campfire. That's a good visual.
Your energy campfire.
What's your advice? So I could imagine, because I would be thinking this if I was listening to this. I would be thinking like, yeah, this is great advice, but so much of ministry is like going from one food related meeting to another, one coffee to another. I mean, it would have been abnormal to, oh, we're meeting over food here. I'm going to this luncheon. I'm going to this FCA meeting, and then I'm meeting with this person for coffee, and then so just food on food on food on food, or coffee house on coffee house on coffee house, or just there's bagels and donuts in the office, and all that stuff. How do you? I mean, again, what's the advice to manage that? And maybe that's just, well, you just got to be disciplined. Maybe it's just like you have to just manage yourself. But I think what you begin to think in your brain, you said it really well. So here's what I say. I think this is what I think happens is I think you're probably spot on that a lot of people in ministry are running on kindling all day.
Yeah.
And so they go from food meeting to food meeting. And so by the time you get to the next meeting, you're going, oh, I'm feeling kind of down.
Right.
Or like I can sense my energy is kind of depleting. So then I throw more kindling on because that's what I'm craving.
Exactly. This is what we call the blood sugar roller coaster.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that has a name.
Well, sure. I mean, yeah.
Okay.
So you have heavy carbs, and then your blood sugar spikes, and then your insulin spikes to bring your blood sugar down, and then it's like you go up, the blood sugar goes up, and then the insulin crashes the blood sugar down, and at the bottom of that drop, on the roller coaster, it feels like your body recognizes that as it's like a cue that it's not safe. It's a cue that it's not going to survive. And so all of your hunger hormones come online and are triggered, and your brain says, we must get fuel in our body right now. And what's the quickest, easiest thing to get in the body right now is processed carbohydrates. And so then you eat more processed carbohydrates, the blood sugar spikes up again, the insulin comes in to help correct that and plummets the blood sugar again, and now you're bottomed out again. And this is why we call it a roller coaster. Because when you crash like that, when you bottom out, the easiest thing to do to feel better right away is to eat. And usually the easiest thing to eat is a processed carbohydrate.
So basically one donut or bagel to the next all day.
Yeah, exactly. But I think, again, if we can bring it back to this umbrella of goal setting and like macro goals versus micro goals, or instead of setting this grand goal or idea or thinking, well, I have to just perfectly balance every meal. And how am I even going to do that? Going from coffee to donut to bagel to whatever I am all day long in ministry. To think, if I can just get my day started with a balanced breakfast before I leave the house, and then let what happens happen the rest of the day. But that's just like one small step that you can do to help starting to have more sustained energy throughout your day. Just focus on breakfast. You don't have to turn the whole ship at once. You don't have to turn the whole food culture of your ministry, what happens in the offices and whatnot. You don't have to turn all that overnight or for the new year in order to serve your own health goals.
Mm-hmm.
But starting with breakfast before you leave the house is just one small thing, I think,
I like that.
that you can do before you get to the church.
That's in line with what we're talking about is, again, maybe my grand goal is, a lot of people talk about weight, but maybe it's like, I want to be at my ideal weight and or maybe they say, I just want to feel better. I don't feel good. I bump into a lot of people in ministry, pastors still, who just don't feel good. So you go, well, I just want to feel better. Well, okay, well, that's like so nebulous. Like, what does that even mean? But I love what you're saying. And that would be a great goal to identify. I'm gonna have a campfire breakfast. Wait, what did you call it?
Your energy campfire. I mean, that's a great, yeah, sure. Your campfire breakfast.
I'm gonna have a campfire breakfast. And then I love what you said. I'm gonna let the day happen, because that actually brings up another whole point of why ministry is hard to goal set for, because it's so unpredictable.
Right.
What the heck do you do when you're doing everything right and then someone calls in the middle of the day and is like, oh my gosh, my son was in a car accident. Can you meet me at the hospital right now? So now you're booking into the hospital, and so it just changes so much. So,
well, I think you bring up an interesting point, though, because I think that a lot of pastors read situations as emergent that maybe aren't emergent, and that a lot of things can feel pressing or emergent in ministry that really will be fine in 30 more minutes. And the car accident is the thing that's the emergent situation, right? Like, there are obvious emergent situations that have to be attended to right immediately right now. But I think that a lot of ministry leaders tend to, again, this is the pressure, but feel that things have to be given immediate attention on a regular daily basis. We're feeling this way when they really don't. When something could wait until after lunch, or something could wait 24 hours, or, this is a problem that's still going to be there 12 hours from now, and I can address it 12 hours from now. I think being able to identify the differences in those situations, because I'm thinking another awesome thing for ministry leaders to be able to do would be to have a slow meal, like to schedule yourself 30 minutes, a 30-minute lunch, let's say. And this is pro health. Slowing down your your meal time helps support digestion and metabolism in major ways. Your digestion can't really come online and function appropriately if you're eating in a rush, eating on the go, eating in a stressed state. Your body doesn't work that way. The part of the nervous system that regulates stress, or that brings stress response or activity online, is opposite from, generally speaking, the part of your body that can digest food, the system that can digest food. And so if we're sitting down, if I'm feeling rushed in ministry, pressed in ministry, one thing to the next all day, all the time, and I can't ever sit down and have an actual meal during the day where I slow down, I let my digestion come online, I let the stressors go offline for a half an hour, then that is detrimental to health in the long run, because digestion is foundational to everything, at all the ways that our body functions. And so
that's gonna be a bit shocking for some to hear.
Well, I think that being able to sit and eat lunch and like pencil it in, I have lunch every day from 12 to 12:30, and if your team knows, you only interrupt me for emergencies, like I'm not talking ministry from 12 to 12:30. I feel like pastors have some autonomy in that, and some ability to make decisions, and again, to set the tone in some of these things. instead of letting the tone be set for them all the time, but to be able to carve out that, and I would even call it like a mini Sabbath in the middle of your day, like a micro Sabbath in the middle of the day. Um, and say, I won't look at my phone. I won't be looking at a computer. I won't be going over ministry paperwork or papers in front of me or notes for a sermon or anything. I'm going to turn off for 30 minutes and be present with my meal is a huge step, a health supportive step that ministry leaders could take.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. I want to add to that. So we've talked about a couple. Talk to me about movements. That would be that's a whole nother aspect of this. Again, you're kind of busy all the time and you're moving from place to place, but like, you're not really doing the healthy movements. So is this another area where, like, how do you squeeze this one in?
Well, I would imagine it kind of differs church to church, leader to leader, what daily movement looks like. I imagine that some pastors are going to be more mobile during their day and some are going to be more kind of at a desk all day. But yeah, movement breaks is something that I talk about with clients a lot. If you're at a desk job, if you're at a computer for a lot of the day, can you just get up and take a movement break every 30 minutes, every 45 minutes, and just do a lap wherever you are? Do a lap. Do 25 squats. Do some arm circles. Just get your body moving. Moving your muscles is a huge support to your metabolic health, your metabolism, again, like how your body makes energy to do everything that it does, because muscles are one of the most major tissue groups that uses glucose to make energy and stores glucose for energy when your body needs it later. So using your muscles helps your body to be more efficient and effective at using glucose and turning that into energy. So anything that you can do to get up out of a seat, even if you're going from the church to, let's say, a coffee shop or a cafe to meet somebody for lunch, park further away in a church parking lot to give yourself more steps. Park further away when you get to the coffee shop to give yourself more movement on the way into your meeting. And then be mindful of how long you're sitting in front of your computer screen, and set a timer if you need to. I know that can help some people. And just when my timer goes off every 45 minutes, I'm going to stand up. I'm going to do some squats or some arm circles, or I'm going to take a lap around the building, or whatever that might look like for your context.
Beautiful. Let's summarize what were the few things we've talked about so far. So movement breaks.
Yep.
That's like very accessible. I like that one. Movement breaks, campfire breakfast. And there was one in the middle that I can't remember.
It was
campfire breakfast. Oh,
you're gonna have to edit this part out of your podcast.
No, we're gonna keep it. We're gonna keep it. We only do raw and honest here. So I got it. But so campfire breakfast, that could be a great goal. Setting a time, like a timed meal, 30-minute meal.
Yes,
that could be a great goal.
Carving out time to eat.
And then movement breaks. That could be a great goal.
Right.
So those, if a person were to do those things, then again, those are great supports to the physical health. Mm-hmm. And you said something that I totally agree with, but if your physical health if you are not physically healthy, you're having a real hard time addressing the spiritual health of those around you. Mm-hmm. That is so true.
I mean, God designed our bodies to work in a particular way, and if we keep ministry kind of segmented or in its box, we can tend to think like, well, this is ministry over here, and that has nothing to do with what my doctor told me at my appointment last Tuesday, but God gave us these bodies to live in, and he designed them in such a way that they do have certain needs, that if we're neglecting the needs of these physical bodies that we're in, we are going to be depleted for whatever the thing is in front of us for the day or month or year, whether that's in ministry or anything else. That physical depletion really hinders a person from living their life and from, for some people, from doing what God would call us to do or how he would call us to live or have us live. Again, it's like if I'm going to church where I work and I'm choosing life at church and I'm pouring myself out for ministry and I'm in the word and I'm prepping sermons and I'm meeting with people to serve them and minister to them and shepherd people in my church. But then I go home and I'm choosing death at every meal, then I'm, um,
Would that be ho-hos and ding-dongs?
ho-hos and ding-dongs are not health supportive. But to me, it does come back to this issue of, and honestly, the thing for me that motivates me personally more than anything else is I get upset when I think about the ways in which the enemy comes in and tries to sow death into my life, steal or kill or destroy. And we think that, again, oh, that maybe that's just spiritual. He does that all in spiritual ways. But I feel like he does that in physiological ways, in physical ways through, uh, you know, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here, but if I'm pouring myself out at church and choosing life there, and then I go home and I'm eating the ho-hos and the ding-dongs and I'm sitting on the couch all night, and I'm scarfing through my meals and I never turn my phone or computer off and I'm neglecting relationships with my spouse or kids for the quote unquote sake of the ministry, I'm choosing death over and over and over. And this is not how the Lord designed us to live. And so I think, like, man, I don't want any part of what the enemy would try to sow into my life in any area of my life, not just that church. And so how can I choose life at dinner time? How can I choose life at bedtime? How can I choose life when I wake up in the morning, in all these contexts outside of my ministry at church where it's my job to choose life?
I love that. Yep, choosing life. That's so good.
But I'll add this
Mhm.
because again, when we talk about like all the areas of my life where I could choose life, that feels like a big, like a grandiose goal. Like, okay, I just have to do better everywhere. All right,
Oh yeah. But
because we've kind of talked about a lot of things or a lot of things that pastors or ministry leaders could do as far as goal setting or areas to focus on. But I know you and I don't want anyone to walk away from listening to this podcast thinking, okay, well, I'm just going to do all of this now. I have to do everything. But pick the area, pick the one thing. Like, where's my starting point? And your starting point would be different than my starting point, would be different than the pastor at our church's starting point, would be different than neighbor's starting point. But as you're listening to the podcast, thinking, what's the thing that jumped out at you of then that might be your starting point. And instead of, again, feeling like you have to turn the whole ship overnight, what's just one little thing I can do that would just get me going in the right direction in one area? It doesn't have to be a whole overwhelming shift. I mean, for me, I honestly hate goal setting. I think it's so funny that you asked me to do this podcast about goal setting because I hate goal setting, but because I end up feeling like a failure a lot of the times, or I've had a history of setting goals that are too big that I could see, well, I want my life to be here at this place, but I have no way to get there, or I just end up failing and then I end up feeling like a failure. And so it's easier for me to just not set goals. But what I will say is that I'm setting goals less and less in my life. But what I am doing more and more is just trying to show up and be consistent every day in very small things. And that actually helps me to reach the bigger goals that I don't even realize, that I'm not even trying to set really anymore, is just showing up and doing the tiny little thing that feels insignificant, but over time it really is significant. And so,
amen.
not doing the whole thing, all at once, or feeling overwhelmed by, okay, I'm going to get healthy this year, or I'm going to get my church healthy this year, or, whatever the thing is, I'm going to get my family healthy this year, in all ways that we can be healthy spiritually,
Yeah.
physically, mentally. But instead, what's one small thing that will just tick the needle in the right direction? What's one small area where I can choose life where maybe right now I'm not, you know?
Mhm.
I don't know. To me, that makes goal setting feel a lot less scary, a lot more attainable
No.
when I can just think about being consistent, even in the tiniest, even if it's the tiniest, most insignificant thing. And I will say one more thing about it. I think that if you have a history of setting big goals and not meeting them, you lose trust in yourself. And so you stop trusting that you're going to do what you say you're going to do, even if it's not really conscious that this is happening. And setting those teeny tiny goals, those teeny tiny steps, is how we rebuild trust with ourselves, of ourself, that, oh, okay, self, when I say that I'm going to do this, then I can actually trust that I am going to do that. That doesn't happen from accomplishing big things. It happens from accomplishing really small things
Yeah.
over and over and over again. And you start to rebuild the trust to be able to dream bigger and set bigger goals.
Yeah, what you're saying, this is actually a much bigger problem for people than they know,
Right.
actually. So there's a lot of research, a lot of studies, but you know, losing trust in ourselves is a massive problem. You're totally right. But also the power in small incremental changes. That was a huge theme in the wildly popular book Atomic Habits from a few years ago. Uh, there's this research on research, book after book. I'm sure there's 10 billion podcasts about it. I could tell you personally. Can I share something personally?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
You've probably heard it, but what's one thing I did? Speaking of small, like just like you said, instead of having a whole page of goals with like check boxes and markers and all these things, because that for me, and I like goals, so
me
you don't like them, but I like them. I like having a word of the year. I like having all these things. But one thing I did was a few years ago, I landed on 4 pillars of health. And I recognize that what I recognize kind of in the vein of what we're talking about is that if any of these pillars is in being destroyed or is not doing well, then the other pillars aren't doing well either. So the pillars were emotional health, spiritual health, physical health, and mental health. And some people might have different ones, but those were the 4 that I identified. And then within those pillars, I just made one goal for each pillar, and that helped a ton. So like my physical goal a couple of years ago was, okay, I'm going to walk 4,000 steps every day. And that was just the goal. And again, that's for some people, that's going to seem like not much, but that just had to be the goal, I felt like. So did that. And this year I'm almost at 6,000 steps a day, which is amazing. But that little goal, but that was one thing. And to your point, that helped me to trust that, okay, this is achievable. So the trust was built up, but also it was easy to keep track of, like
Mhm.
these 4 pillars. Each pillar has one goal in it. That's only 4 things to keep track of in a year, as opposed to a whole spreadsheet. So I wonder if that would be helpful to folks, but I mean, it's in vain with what we're talking about, in line with it. And again, it just is embracing this idea that it's not going to be the monumental thing. Like it's not going to be, it's not necessarily going to be, I want to see my church baptize 15,000 people this year. Like that's an amazing goal.
Right.
That's amazing. But that has to start somewhere.
Right.
And I would argue that would start with something like telling your church, okay, church, I want everybody in this room, your goal this month is to invite one person.
Mhm.
Like that's the type of leading goal that could reach this huge vision. We want to baptize 15,000 people, but we got to start by just inviting friends to church. So that's the goal. So if I want my weight to be I want to weigh the same as I did in high school. Like, okay, great. That's a great goal, but it's probably got to start with, taking 4,000 steps a day.
Yeah, or buying your 40-ounce water bottle.
Buy a 40-ounce water bottle, have a campfire breakfast. Like, you have to do the little thing.
Yeah, and it's if I can't, if I try fail, if I try fail, try fail, try fail, then it's identifying what are those little barriers that are keeping me from this micro goal or this micro step. If I set a goal to meet 4,000 steps a day, for example, and I don't, let's say I'm at 2,000 steps, or 1,500 steps for a couple days in a row, I think a lot of people's tendency is to go, well, I'm just a failure and I'll never be able to do it. And I don't know why I even thought that I should try and I'll give up, right? But the thing that's more helpful is to be curious instead of critical when we come to our failures, because failure is just data. And this is kind of how my brain works. And especially, I coach clients a lot, but I have to coach myself in these things too, because I'm quite a perfectionist. I carry a lot of pressure just personally day to day. And so I coach myself in these things too. But the idea that failure can just be data to me feels so freeing. And I can go, okay, well, instead of having to feel like, oh, I'm such a loser because I can't walk 4,000 steps, to instead get curious and go, well, why can't I walk 4,000 steps? What's the thing that's keeping me from walking 4,000 steps? Down to something so little, right? Maybe it's, I don't have time. Okay, well, why don't I have time? Let's get more granular. Let's zoom in and in and in until we find what's the barrier that's keeping me from this, or the handful of barriers. And then you start addressing the barriers. If you can't meet the goal. Instead of feeling like, well, if I didn't meet the goal today, the whole train is derailed and I don't know how I'm ever going to get it back on the tracks. No. If you want to walk 4,000 steps in a day and, you set the goal on Tuesday and then Wednesday you only walk 2,000 steps, the whole train isn't derailed. Like you go, okay, is there something I can observe or learn from this today? And then I can make a little shift, a micro shift tomorrow. It's these micro things. And I would say this is how it works spiritually too, because when you think about the barriers, when I think about the barriers in my life, the enemy doesn't work in macro ways, usually, sometimes. But it would be too obvious. We would see it. We would know it. We would get it, right?
It's the little foxes.
Yes, it's the little foxes that spoil the vine, and it's the enemy gets a foothold before he gets a stronghold. And so being able to look at my life and go, well, where does the enemy have a foothold? And I imagine for people listening, they can identify right now where that foothold is. You don't usually have to think too hard, especially if you're a believer, you have the Holy Spirit and you're soft and sensitive to the Holy Spirit. You usually don't have to work too hard to go, yeah, I know this is where the enemy has that little foothold, right? But it's little. And that's the type of thing but that's why little habit shifts or little goal setting or little aspirations, little baby steps can make such a big difference, because I feel like that's how we fight for life in all the big areas, is with these tiny little, one good decision after the next, one life-giving or life-choosing decision at a time. And they're tiny and they're micro. And that's not lame. Like, that's not lame to make tiny little,
Right. Well,
you
because
take
huge
your
goals are
yes,
fun. It's fun to talk the big talk. And like I said, it's fun to go, we're going to baptize 15,000 people, or I'm going to run a triathlon this year, or whatever. I'm going to read the whole Bible 6 times this year. It's so fun to say that.
right,
It's so fun. But then again, but then how are you going to get there?
right,
But what you're saying is this is a great place to land this plane, because this brings us back to the whole idea of us sitting down, which was to talk a little bit about next year, talk about some goals, talk again from the perspective of people who've done ministry together for a long time, but also your perspective as a nutritionist, which again is very helpful in the vein of let's make sure you're physically healthy. Like that should be a goal for people, physical health. But to bring it all the way back to, it's the little habits that are going to make the biggest differences. It's not our big talk about this, that, or the other thing. It's actually those little things done over and over and over again.
Yeah. And if you want to dream.
Yeah.
If you want to set the big goal. But then what are the action steps?
Right. We'll recognize, it's going to take,
right.
Like I said, it's going to take a goal like, okay, I'm going to invite a new friend to church every week.
Right.
If you want to baptize 15,000 more people next year.
Right. Yeah. Same. If you want to lose 90 pounds this year, that has to start with breakfast tomorrow.
Right.
It's the tiny little thing.
Amen.
Every day.
Amen.
Yeah. And for you, I think it's helpful to keep the big goals in mind. And some personalities are like that and are going to resonate with that. For me, or a personality like me, it helps sometimes to shelf the big goals and to say, I generally know how to get focused in my day and what to do. And that's just kind of showing up and being intentional in all the small stuff, one small thing at a time. And that gets me to the bigger goals.
Yep.
Like fake myself out. Rabbit.
Yeah. Yep. Well, it's great having you here. I'll see you in the kitchen in 5 minutes. But I hope 2026 is amazing. I hope we could do more of this. And I hope that if you're listening and you've listened this far, thank you. And I just pray, Tosh and I pray together that you'd be encouraged. And we could, if there's anything we could offer after, our shared experience of many, many decades of ministry, many decades of encouraging others who are in ministry, it really would be to embrace some of these things that we're talking about and set some small actionable goals that you can achieve. Reestablish trust with yourself, with God, with your family, and just embrace it and see what happens. See what happens. One little step at a time. Like Tasha said it so well. The enemy gets a foothold before he creates a stronghold. It's the little foxes. So if that's true, then be okay with a little step here and there. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Tasha.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another pastor or ministry leader who you think might benefit from this conversation. And if you're looking for more tools and resources to help you preach and lead with confidence, be sure to check out sermoncentral.com/podcast. Sermon Central is the largest online resource hub for pastors and ministry leaders. From illustrations to outlines to media, you'll find everything you need to preach and lead effectively. So check out sermoncentral.com/podcast, where you'll even find a special podcast listener discount on our membership pricing. Check it out and stay tuned for our next episode.